Now, some time ago, I built a Tinder clone using a no-code tool. Now, that video was one of the more popular videos on the channel. A lot of you really like that video. A lot of you asked me to create some more enhancements, make some more tutorials and things like that. But now with the advent of GPT-3 and ChatGPT, and especially the ChatGPT API, which was released recently, we can build next level apps. We can build incredible, amazing apps and really make all existing apps a lot better by adding a little bit of AI magic. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can design and build an amazing AI dating app that does a lot more than existing dating apps. And really wait until you see this app because you're going to be blown away and you're going to get a ton of interesting ideas that you can implement and build on top of the app. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps that I'm going to be demonstrating and building in today's video are going to be available to view and or clone directly from my Patreon page, which you're going to see a link to it in the description below. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is the design of the app. We need to understand how the app is going to be architected and what's expected of us in terms of going out and building this app. And right now we are looking at a diagram for a ChatGPT enhanced dating app. Okay, this is the flow right here. And the way this app is going to work is, so the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to get a list of users. Now, these are going to be the users that we have not yet seen and users of our desired gender. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take all of those users and we are going to send them to a ChatGPT API and ask it for recommendation. So we're going to essentially tell the bot a little bit about ourselves, as well as we're going to send the possible candidates, and we're going to ask the bot to help us out and give us a list of possible candidates that are going to be compatible with us. After we got the list of possible candidates, we are going to show the familiar Tinder swipe flow, right? So you know this flow, you see the card of the user and you can swipe left if you do not like them, or you can swipe right if you do like them. If we swipe no, then we essentially reject the user and we can see the next user. On the other hand, if we swipe yes, we are going to create a new match record and then we're going to check, did they already match us as well? If they did match us, then we're going to create a new chat record so that we can chat with the user. Now, on the other hand, if they did not match us here, then we need to wait for them to return the favor. Otherwise, we can't really start chatting with them just yet. All right, so now that you've seen the general architecture, the general diagram that's going to be very helpful to you when you see the app, let's talk about the AI aspect of this app. Let's talk about the recommendation engine. So we are going to be using the newly released GPT 3.5 Turbo, and this is essentially the API to ChatGPT. And this essentially means that we can embed existing ChatGPT functionality within our apps, making them much more powerful and useful. Now, I had a comprehensive tutorial on using the new ChatGPT API in one of the previous videos, but in case you haven't seen it, the way it works is that first you send a system message. Okay, this is an optional message, and you are essentially telling the bot what role the bot is going to be playing. Is it going to be doing recommendations? Is it going to be an assistant? Is it going to be doing something else? This is an optional message. You don't need to send that, but it can be helpful in certain situations, as you're going to see a little bit later in the video. Next, you're going to be asking it various questions with the user role. So for instance, you might ask, something like, who won the World Series in 2020? And the bot is going to give you an answer. And then you can follow up with another question and the bot is going to reply again. But keep in mind that every time you're going to be sending something to the bot, in other words, every time you're going to be making a new request, you need to package all the previous questions and all the previous answers in your new question. That is the way it works. And the reason we need to do that is because this way it keeps context. Now, to learn more about this API and all the features and functionalities, you can head over to platform.openai.com /docs/API reference. And here you can find everything that you need to know in order to interface with the ChatGPT API. Okay, so now that we talked about ChatGPT's API, let me show you how I'm actually going to be crafting my own API requests and the kind of responses that I'm going to be getting back in return. So here we have an example of a API call that I'm going to be using in this app today, okay? And so keep in mind, this whole API is in a JSON format, okay? First, we have the model, and this is always going to be this. Next, we have the messages. And so as you can see, I'm sending the system message here. Okay, this is optional, but it's going to be very, very helpful as you're going to see. And next, I'm sending the actual user message. And essentially in the system message, I am telling it a little bit about what I want, a little bit about what kind of responses I want, what kind of format I want. And then in the user message, I'm giving it information about myself and information about possible matches, and then asking it to give me a list of the best matches out of that list that are going to be the most compatible with me. And so in the system role, we are saying that you are a matchmaker. I will tell you some things about the person and give you a list of possible matches. Your job is to help to find the best matches for the person. Don't be too verbose. Refer to the user in the U form. Format entire response in the JSON format. And I'm also giving it kind of a sample of the JSON format that I want to get back. And so I'm asking it to come back with results. I wanted to give me a name of the person. I wanted to rate the person on a scale of 1 to 5. I wanted to list the positives of that person, and I wanted to list the negatives. And I also wanted to give me back the UID, which we're going to pass initially. And you're going to learn a little bit later in the video why that is very, very important. And so here's a sample request. I'm saying me, I'm saying age, I'm saying male, I'm saying from Phoenix. These are my likes, movies, cooking, and travel. And then I'm saying rate the following candidates 1 to 5 and order them in descending order. Okay, so from the highest rating to the lowest rating. And I'm giving it a list of people. So here's the first candidate. We have Olivia, age 31, from Washington, D.C., likes dancing, travel, photography. UID is this. And then we have Sophia, age 29, from Philadelphia, likes reading, travel, yoga, and this is the UID. Now, it's important to know that I only have 2 possible candidates. Of course, in the live app version, we're going to have a lot more candidates. And so when we execute this request, as I'm doing right now, you're going to get a response that looks something like this. So it says choices, it says message, and then we have content, and then we have this JSON response right here. Okay, this is the response that we're looking at. And we're getting back results. We're getting back name Olivia, rating is 4, positives travel, negatives dancing. We get back the UID, and then we're getting also name Sophia, rating is 3, positives travel, negatives reading yoga. Okay, so as you can see, the bot made a decision. It's telling us that Olivia is a better match for us than Sophia. Okay, and the reason for that is we have similar interests, or maybe we have similar age. And in other cases, maybe we are, we live closer in terms of cities and kind of geography than, as compared to some of the other candidates. Now, obviously, the results are going to be different depending on who is the user that's using the app, right? So this user right here, this me, it's going to be different depending on who's using the app. You're going to have maybe a female using this app, and it's going to be female, maybe of a different age, or maybe a male using this app from LA or Miami or Madrid or whatever, and with different interests, etc., etc. And so this takes into account all of that, because in the app we're going to be generating this prompt on the fly. This is just a sample prompt to show you a sample response. Okay, and so now that you've seen the architecture for the app, you've seen a sample API request, you've seen a sample API response. Let's jump inside of Flutterflow, which is my no-code builder of choice, and let me show you a proof of concept app. All right, so here I am inside of Flutterflow, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new test environment, and I'm going to show you this app, and then we're going to jump back inside of Flutterflow, and I'm going to show you how I build this app so that you can build a similar app as well. All right, so here's the app, and as you can see, the first thing that it's doing is it's telling us it's finding customized matches just for you. And so what it's doing is it's firing off this API request, and it's getting back a response that it's going to display in just a moment. All right, so it finished customizing matches for us, and now you're seeing the familiar Tinder UI. And so we are seeing the possible match, right? This is Olivia here, and Olivia has 4 stars, right? She's 31 from Washington, D.C. And we're also see the reasons why we should date her, right? So it says, why date me? Enjoys travel like you do, likes photography, which can lead to shared activities. Why not date me? Dancing may not be your cup of tea, okay? So we can choose to reject this person, or we can choose to like him. So I see it has given her 4 stars. So I'm going to say yes. Next, we see the next candidate, okay? Only 3 stars this time. And this is Ava Martinez. She's 25 from Houston. And it says, why date me? Also likes travel, interest in art, could lead to creative experiences. Now for why not date me, we actually did not get a reason from the bot. And so in a production app, you can actually remove this if you do not see a reason, which is very, very easy to do. And so 3 stars, I'm going to say I am interested, okay? Next, we see Emily Johnson. Okay, only 2 stars now. She's 32 from LA. Why date me? Shared interest in cooking. Okay, I think I listed cooking as one of my interests. And then why not date me? Little overlap in other interests. Okay, so I'm gonna say I don't want to date her, right? Okay, so let's say I finished using the app and I can go into my chat screens, and as you can see, I have no chats here at all. And this last tab here, I can see who I am logged in as. So here's my information. I'm James Wilson at yahoo.com, and these are my interests, okay? And this is useful for debugging, right? This is useful just to see who are you logged in as in order to test this app as different people. And by the way, all of these users are generated randomly. These are not real people. I simply use an app to create random accounts, okay? And so now I can log out and log back in as one of the people that I matched previously, in order to see that if I match somebody who matched me, is there going to be a special flow, and will I be able to chat with this person? And so remember, one of the people that I matched was Olivia. And so if we go into the database here, we can see that this is right here is Olivia. This right here is my account, and this right here is Olivia. So I'm going to copy her, randomly generated email here, and I'm going to log in as her. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to say log out. I'm going to paste her thing, and I'm going to put in the password, and I'm going to log back in. And now the same thing is happening to Olivia. It's customizing different matches that Olivia might be interested in, okay? So we're gonna wait a couple of seconds. All right, so now we got our customized matches. So for Olivia, John Smith is the number 1 match. It's 4 stars. Why date me? Likes travel and photography, which align with your interests. Also likes music. And then it says, why not date me? Slightly older than you at age 28. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. And then this is me, right? And as it happens to be, I'm in the last place. Only 1 star for Olivia. And I'm going to say yes. Now remember, Olivia matched me, and it says matched. And then we are redirected to the chat screen. And being that I'm logged in as Olivia, Olivia's picture shows first, followed by James. And I can click on this and I can actually chat with James. And I can say, hey, James. Okay, if I do that, I see the message here and I can say, what are you doing, James? Okay, and maybe let's hang out. Now, what I can do is I can log out, log back in as James to see if we see the match and whether we can chat with Olivia. So I'm going to go ahead, log out as Olivia, log back as James. Okay, so now I'm logged in as James, and as you can see, my avatar is first, followed by Olivia, and it says here chat with Olivia, and I can click on this and I see the messages and I can reply, hey Olivia. Okay, and so once Olivia logs in, she's gonna see my messages there as well. Now let's say I'm not interested in following up with Olivia. I'm not interested in chatting with her. Well, guess what? I can just click on this and I can delete it. Okay. And then I can go back to the main screen and I can look for new customized matches. All right. And now I am back on this home screen and I'm seeing new matches. So here's Isabella. She's 4 stars. I haven't seen her before, 26 Boston, enjoys watching movies around the same age as you. Lives far away from Phoenix. Okay, so that could be a deal breaker, right? So maybe I'm not interested. And so if Olivia logs in and she's interested in dating me, she can match me. And then we're going to see this chat item here, and we can start chatting and repeat the same process. All right, so now that you've seen a proof of concept, let's jump back inside of Flutterflow and let me show you exactly how I built this app. Now, the first thing that you have to do is you have to configure Firebase, okay? So you're going to come in here, you're going to go to Firebase, you're going to come here, you're going to look up your project ID. So if I come into my Firebase dashboard here, I can see that the project ID is right here. This is the project ID. I can just copy it and paste it in here. You're going to say add or set up. You're going to regenerate config files. Once you do that, the next thing you want to do is you want to configure your schema, your Firestore schema. And what we have here in our schema, we have the users, we have chats with a messages sub collection, and we also have the matches collection. Okay, so the users is created automatically for you by Flutterflow if you have Firebase authentication turned on. So if I come over here and I click on authentication, I haven't turned on. That means that it's automatically going to create this users collection. But even with this users collection, you still need to create a bunch of other fields beyond the 6 or so fields that it creates automatically. So I created a bunch of other fields. So I created interest, age, location, gender, scene, and desired gender, right? So, these are self-explanatory, right? This is going to be my interest, my age, the user's age, the location, the gender, and the desired gender. Now, scene is a little bit more involved, right? The scene is a list of strings, and it's essentially a list of UIDs. And these are the people that I've already seen, or this user that has seen already, okay? Because, one of the things about these dating apps is that once you've seen the person, you don't want to see them again, right? It makes no sense to keep showing you the same person. So as soon as it showed me the person, okay, and so if I rejected them or if I accepted them, right, I matched them, I immediately add them to this collection, as you're going to see in just a second. So this is what the scene is. Next, we have chats. Chats has user 1, user 2, which are both strings. Last message, if you want to display the last message, I'm actually not doing this in this app, but that is something that you can do. And then we have a list of UIDs, right? We have a list of the 2 UIDs that are participating in the chat. And this is nice because I can easily filter the different chats if I'm a participant, okay? As you're going to see in just a second. Next, we have messages, and here we have user, we have the message, we have the timestamp, and we have the UID, okay? So very, very simple, self-explanatory. They're all, we have strings, timestamp, and the reference to the UID in case we need to look up some information about the user and display, their photo, their avatar. You can't do it if you have just this. You need to have the reference to the user. And last but not least, we have the matches. And inside the matches, I only have 2 fields. I have user ID 1, UID 1, UID 2, okay? And so when we are, matching or rejecting the people, if we match them, I create a new document here, okay? And that way, the other person can check later if somebody matched them, right? Because the other person is going to match, but it's also going to check, well, did the other person match us already? And then it's going to create the chat, as you're going to see in a second. And so this is our schema. If we head over to our database right here, this is my Firebase console here. And so I'm going to go to Firestore database right here. What I have is chats, matches, and users. You can ignore these 2. They're not related to this project. And so these are our users. I have 10 randomly generated users, right? I have 5 women and 5 men, just to keep things nice and equal. And so these are our users. I have chats. These are going to be documents where people are chatting right after they match. And then I also have matches, okay? And so I have 4 matches. And this is going to happen if I match someone and the other person matches me as well. And that way it's going to be comparing, okay, did we match them? Did the other person match us as well? If so, we need to create a new chat document, and so that, they can chat with each other. All right, so now that we looked at the database and the schemas and all that, let me quickly show you how the API is set up, because that is really the heart of the app. And so if we head over to this API tab here, we only have one call here, right? GPT get match prospects, okay? And we are using this URL. This is all in the documentation. Content type is application JSON authorization. This is going to be your key. And this is my key, okay? So I'm gonna delete this key, okay? You won't be able to use this key, okay? Next is we have variables, right? The variables are gonna be things that we're gonna be sending to this API. In this case, we have a prompt that's going to be generated dynamically, right? Depending on who the user is using the app and the possible matches and all that. So this is a prompt, type is string, it's not a list. And then we have the body, okay? And this is where the prompt is. It's a JSON body. This is the prompt right here, right? So this is fixed, right? This is, the same thing that I had right here, right? This is this thing right here. This is, except the role is user, but this thing is going to be dynamically generated. So all of this is going to be dynamically generated depending on, who is the person using this app, as well as, who are the possible matches that the user may be interested in, right? This is all going to be different for every single person, right? And so this is going to be dynamically generated. So after we generate it, we're going to be passing it into this API call, and we're going to be executing this request. All right, so now that we talked about the database schema, the API calls and all that, let's talk about the app design. And there's going to be a lot of important things here. So make sure you pay close attention, because I'm using some advanced techniques, advanced functionality here in order to get this app to work the way I want it to work. First, we have this home, right? This is that main top level element, okay? And in this top level element, we want to get a list of users that we haven't seen yet of gender that we are interested in. So we're doing some filtering and getting a list of users before we send them to the API in order to get recommendations, okay? So if you go to this home and you come back and you look at this query here, if you edit this query, what we're doing is we were pulling up users, I'm getting a list of documents, and I set a limit of 5, okay? You can remove that limit, but I just set it as 5 just to test it out, so we're not dealing with a lot of users. And we have 2 filters here, right? The first filter is we only want users that we haven't seen yet, okay? So we're just saying UID of the user UID, it's not in the scene, which is a field on the authenticated users, which is the user that's using the app, the user who is authenticated. And this is a field in our database that contains a list of strings, a list of UIDs of the people that we haven't seen. And so we don't want to see people that we've seen already, okay? That's the first filter. The second filter, we are saying we only want users with a gender that's equal to our, the desired gender, because every user has a desired gender. These are the gender of the people they're interested in, okay? So whether it's female or male, what we're saying is show us only the people that match of the desired gender of the authenticated user. So give us the people of the gender that we want and show us the people that we haven't seen yet. These are the 2 filters. And as a result, we get a collection of users that we're going to be using in different situations on this page. Next, we have a column here, okay? And we're also doing a query here, okay? And so if we edit this backend query, what we're doing here is we are essentially taking this authenticated user, their reference, and we are getting the user themselves, okay? We need to get the actual user, not the reference of the user, the actual user, because we need that user record for different things that we're going to be doing, as you're going to see in a second. So if we come back to the container, this is where we execute the API call, okay? So if we edit this backend query, we have this, we're doing an API call. We have GPT get matches prospects. This is our one and only API call. And we are sending this prompt variable, and we are generating this prompt using a custom function called generate prompt. So if I show you this function, well, first of all, this function takes 2 arguments. And why is that? Well, if you take a look at the request, we need to send ourselves, and then we need to send a list of users who we haven't seen yet, who are of the correct gender that we are looking for. And that is why this function has 2 arguments. We are passing this auth user, and we are passing the users that we pulled up, right? So if I edit this function right here, and so what is this function doing? Well, it takes in the authenticated user and the users, and it creates a prompt that looks exactly like this, right? So this is what the prompt is going to look like, this right here. Okay, so this is me, and that is why we need authenticated user, because we are accessing the fields. If we got the reference, we wouldn't be able to access the fields because that's just a reference. We need the actual user. And so we're saying me, age, gender, from, location, likes, interests. And then we have a command, right? Rate the following candidates 1 to 5 and order them in descending order. And then for each of the users that we got in the previous step, we are going to be generating a kind of a string. So we say display name, age, from location, likes, interests, UID is UID. And this is very, very important. This is very, very important. And you're going to see that in just a little bit. Make sure you do not miss this part. This is very crucial. And so then we simply return me plus command plus match. Essentially what it does, it concatenates all of these three things. And as a result, we have a prompt that looks something like this, exactly like this, except we're going to have a lot more users here. Here we only have 2 users, but in a real production app, you might have 10 users, 20 users, etc., etc. Okay. And so what happens here, we get back this prompt, and then we take this prompt and we pass it as a parameter to our API request. Okay. And then it executes our API. And so in this step, it executes our API. And now we have this data that we are going to be getting back. And this data looks like this. This is kind of what the data looks like. And the other thing that's important to understand is that if we edit this API call, we are not interested in this whole data. We only want choices, message, content. Okay. We only want this thing right here, right? Let me show you, right? This thing right here. That is only what we want. We don't care about this other thing. We only want this, okay? And so that is why I have this JSON path selected, and I gave it a name of response. And that way I can easily reference it pretty much everywhere, because I only really want this, okay? All right, so now that we talked about this API call, we're gonna execute this API call. And another really cool thing about it is we have a backend query loading widget that is called comp empty, right? So if we come over here to our comps, our component, this is what the widget looks like, okay? Finding customized matches for you. Please wait while we discover the right people for you. And then I have a custom animation here. And I am using rev.app for custom animation. And if you come over to rev.app, you're gonna find a bunch of animations. And this is an animation that I picked. It's probably not the best animation for this specific purpose. Maybe this is for finding flights, for instance, but still it's very, very easy to change. You can change it to a different animation if you want, but that is essentially the component that we are using while this thing is sending the request, because we want to display some. Okay, so now that we executed the request, we need to do something else. We also need to get a list of matches, and we need to do it before the actual swipeable stack, okay? And the reason is because inside of swipeable stack, it needs to access a list of matches. So I have another container that's one level above swipeable stack that essentially doesn't do anything, this container. All it does is it executes a query that just gets the matches. And I don't have any filters, I don't have any limits, I just want all the matches. Because when we are actually going to be matching the person inside this swipeable stack widget, we need to have access to all the previous matches to see whether the other person matched us as well. This is very, very important. And now we are finally getting to the meat of the app. And this is the swipeable stack, which is a built-in Flutterflow widget. In fact, when I built a Tinder app some months ago, Flutterflow did not have this widget yet. And so I had to do something else. But now it's built in, so it's very, very easy to use. And so we're using the swipeable stack, and there's lots of things happening here, okay? So if you come back to this generate dynamic children, we need to use this because remember, we have the results from the API call. And now what we need to do is we need to convert the results into something that could be used by swipeable stack. And so what we're doing is we are passing these results, right? We are passing results, but we are passing it inside of a function called get user records. It's a very, very simple function. All it does is it uses something called JSON decode that it decodes the response. Because if you take a look at this response here, this is a string, but it's JSON encoded, okay? And this is nice for passing it around via APIs. But once we have this string, and in our app, and we need to kind of make sense of this data, we don't want it to be as a string. We need to decode it into a data structure that we can use. And this is exactly what this function is doing. It takes this string that we got from OpenAI, from our ChatGPT API, and now we need to decode it. And this is awesome because we can essentially take the string here, Because remember, we're telling it format their entire response in the JSON format. It formats the whole thing in JSON format, and that way we can get it back, we can decode it, and we can start using the data. It's really awesome. It's really nice that we can do that. So what's happening here is that we're passing this response. Remember, this is from that API call, right? This response from this get match prospects API. This is our JSON path. We're passing that JSON encoded response into our function. Our function takes that JSON encoded stuff and decodes it. And now we can use this inside of Swipeable Stack because now we have a list of items. These are a list of matches. And so we just give it a list, results, and we get back these items. And now we can cycle through these items and we can do interesting things with it, right? So that is the Swipeable Stack, but there's more to it than that, right? So if you go to our actions, if you open the actions, there's a lot of things happening, right? Specifically, if the person swiped left, we need to mark them as seen. Okay, that's it. We've seen them, so we do not want to match with this person. We rejected them. We need to mark them as seen. So if we come to the actions of Swipeable Stack and click on left swipe, you're going to see that what we are doing here is we're getting the authenticated user, the user that's logged in, and we are finding the scene field on the authenticated user, and we are adding the UID of the person that we're seeing in the swipeable card. Because remember, we are getting back a UID field for each of the users. And so if we've seen that user, we can just reference them right here in this UID of the swipeable stack, and then we can just mark them as seen, that UID is seen. And that way we're never going to see that person again, because one of the first queries is to filter out all the people that we have seen already. So we're never going to see that person again. On the other hand, if they swipe right, that means they're interested in this person. We need to do a bunch of different things. And so the first thing that we need to do is we still need to update scene. So even though we match them, there's no reason for us seeing them again. We've seen them already. So regardless if we rejected them or we matched them, we still need to mark them as seen. And that is what we're doing here. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a matches document. Okay, and so what we're doing is we have a matches document that accepts two fields, right? And so the first field, I have a convention where I put myself in the UID 1, and UID 2, I am putting the UID of the user in the swipeable card. And now we have a match record, okay? The next thing we need to do is we need to check, did the other person match us or not? And so we have this check if matches, which is a custom function that we pass two things. We pass the matches, right? All the old matches, the existing matches from before. And then we are also passing the UID that's in the card, right? We want to see, did that person that we're looking at, did they match us already? Because that's great, right? Because we are interested in them. Are they interested in us, right? So that's kind of what we're doing. And so we're passing a bunch of things to this function. We're passing the matches, the existing matches. This is a list of documents, the existing matches. Then we're passing the UID of the person that's in the card. And we're also passing the UID of us, okay? Because if that person matched us, they would put themselves as UID 1 and the other person in the card as UID 2. And so that is why we are reversing it. And so if they matched us, there's going to be a record that looks exactly like this already in the system, right? And so let me show you what the function looks like. If we edit this function, what we're doing is we're cycling through the matches and we're simply comparing, right? Is the UID in the record the same as the UID we're passing? And also, is the UID 2 in the record the same as the UID 2 that we're passing? Return true, otherwise return false. There's no record of that match. That means they haven't gotten around to match us or they're not interested in us, right? A very, very simple function that checks if there is already an existing match, okay? So if this function return true, we're going to show a snack bar that says match, and then we're going to do a bunch of other things. We're going to create a new chat record, right? User 1, user 2, which is myself, display name, then the other user display name. And then I'm going to add myself to the UIDs, which is a list of people that are participating in the match. And then you can have a last message as well. I'm just using empty chat. Next here, we're going to update that existing record, the chat record, and we're going to add the other user. And so not only do we have, both users in two different fields, but we also have them in the list. And that way it's going to be very, very easy later on just to filter the chats where one of us is a participant, right? Because we can simply check if the UID, the authenticated user UID, is on that list of users, right? Very, very easy, nice and quick and easy to do. And then once we created the chat, we are doing a little bit of bookkeeping. We are essentially deleting that matches record, okay? Because we don't need that anymore. We now have the chats record, okay? We now can chat to the user. We don't need those we don't need that matches record. And so this is nice. It's not required, but if you don't do that, you're going to have a ton of matches that really are useless at this point. And last but not least, we're going to navigate to the chat screen so that the user can chat to the person who they just matched. So as you can see, there are lots and lots of things happening on the home page, but the other pages are simpler than this, right? So we can go to the chats, which is the next one. And right here, very, very simple. We have simple list view here. And then we have a query right here. And what we're doing is we have one filter where we are checking if the authenticated user is a participant, meaning their ID is in that list of IDs on the chat record. And so what we're doing is we're going through the chat records and we're saying UIDs array contains this authenticated user UID. Very, very quick and easy. That's why I like using these lists of something, because I can just use array contains or in, not in, makes things very, very easy. Now, there's a couple of interesting things that are happening. We have the image, and in this image, we are always displaying ourselves first, meaning the person who is logged in has their image first, okay? Next, we need to display the other user's picture. Now, before we can display the photo URL of the user, we need to get this user first, right? So we have a query right on the image here. And so if we edit this query, what we are doing is we have a custom function that gets the reference, the document reference from a UID, right? So, and in order to pass this UID, we have another function that gets us the other user, right? So if you open this function up, we are passing ourselves and we're passing a list of UIDs. And all this function is doing is it compares, right? So it says, okay, you gave me a list of users. There are going to be 2 users, but you also gave me yourself. So if they match, if the first user in that array is you, then we need to pass the other user. If not, then we need to pass the first user, okay? Very, very simple function, just one line. And this function returns the string of the UID. Now, once we have the string, we have another function called get document ref from UID that essentially gives the reference to that document, because a string, we can't really do anything with the string, but with a reference, we can pass it to this document from reference and get the actual document. And then once we have the document, we can get the photo URL, right, from this user that we just executed right here, this document from reference. Okay, so I hope all of that makes sense. I'm going to show you the functions that I have in just a little bit when I finish here, and then hopefully it's going to make more sense. Here we have chat with, it's a text combination, chat with display name, and we have this user's document. This user's document is the other user, okay? And so that way we can display, chatting with so-and-so and not say chatting with James, right? It needs to say the other user. And last but not least, we have the icon button, which is the simplest thing. It essentially deletes this document, right? It deletes this chat document that's, referenced by this row here. So very, very quick and easy. Lots of things are happening. Hopefully it made some sense. And we also have an action, right? So if you click on this card, you're going to be redirected to messages, and we're going to be passing this chat reference, okay? Because we need to see the messages for this specific reference, right? So if you go to messages, you're going to see now we have a list of messages, and it follows that familiar logic that I talked about in some of the other videos, right? We have a list view, we have a stack, and then we have different cards, right? So for instance, we have a card that's left justified, we have a card that's right justified, and depending on, who is the message me, is the message the other person, it's going to display the message and it's going to justify it, right? So we have, this is card me, and I am doing, I have conditional visibility, UID is equal to user record reference, which is me, which is the authenticated user right here. This is the authenticated user. And then the other person, it doesn't equal, right? So this is the other person. So this is not the person who is logged in. And in that case, we're simply going to, we have here a row. And if we scroll down, it's going to be left justified. And here we have a row that's going to be right justified. So if it's us, it's going to be right justified. If it's not us, it's going to be left justified, which is the flow that I've seen in pretty much all the messaging apps that I used, iMessage, WhatsApp, Telegram, etc., etc. So very, very quick and easy flow. We also display the image of the user, the photo URL here of that specific, the owner of that message, because on each message we have the UID, right? So here, we're essentially, we can pull up that UID, right, of the user. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're getting the document reference because on each message document, we have the UID reference, which means we can pull essentially the whole user, all the information having to do with the user. And we need that to display the image, right? And maybe some other information in the future. And so we have the photo URL from the user that we pulled up via that reference. And then we have the messages, which are fields on that messages collection here. Okay, so this is this screen right here. And then we also have the button right here. We have a input widget here, input message. We call it input message. And then here we have the button. And all this button is doing is it's essentially creating a new message document. It's also updating the last message on the chat screen. So on that main chat screen, you can see that last message. I'm actually not displaying it in this prototype, but you can display it if you want. And then we are clearing text fields here. Now, I want to quickly show you a list of functions that I have here in this app that are indispensable to making everything work together, okay? So the first function is check if matches. And this is the function that takes in a collection of matches, which is a list of matches records, essentially the whole collection, gets two IDs and then checks if there is already a record in there with these two IDs in this specific order. Next, we have generate prompt, which takes the auth user, which is the user who is logged in, and a bunch of possible matches and creates a prompt that's going to be sent to the ChatGPT. The next function we have is get document reference from UID. And this is a very, very useful function. And so what makes this function super useful is that we can take the UID, which is a string, and then get the references. And then inside of Flutterflow, we can get the actual document with the actual record from that reference. Next, we have the get other user, which takes the user and then a list of other UIDs that we want to compare. And essentially what it does is it checks if the first one matches, return the other one. If the other one matches, return the first one. That's kind of all it does. We have get user records, which decodes the API response from ChatGPT because we're asking it to encode it into JSON. And so we need to decode it. And next we have string to double. And this is a simple helper function that takes a string and converts it to a double. A double is essentially an integer. It's essentially a number. It's a type of number. And you need this function because when you are displaying this rating bar, remember, we are getting a rating from ChatGPT, but that rating is a string. Flutterflow considers it to be a string, right? And so we need to convert it to a double in order to be able to display it inside this rating bar widget. All right, so that's how the app works. Lots of different things happening here. And so what made this app a little bit more complex is the fact that not only are we working with data that exists in a database and we're manipulating data and doing all kinds of things with this data, basically how general, simple Flutterflow apps are built. But what we are doing here is we are also making an API request and we need to use this data back. And so remember, when we are making this API request, we are sending the UIDs of the specific user. And so when we get that response, we get this UID back. And thanks to that custom function that I showed you earlier, we can take that UID and we can match it to the user in the database because we can pass that UID and we can get the actual document reference. And that way we can reconcile the data with the data that we have in our Firebase storage and with the data that we receive from the API call. Now, if you're watching this video and you're thinking to yourself, that is an incredible app. There's lots of potential to these kinds of apps. And so maybe I want to build an app exactly like this, or maybe I want to tweak this app and change it around and create a slightly different version of this app. Or maybe, just maybe, you want to take that API functionality, that recommendation engine, and implement a completely different app using this functionality. And really, there's so many things that you can do when you add the magic of AI to existing apps that really it's limited by your imagination. But nevertheless, what would be ideal is being able to view and or clone the exact app that I'm looking at right now. And you can do that by joining our amazing Patreon community, because when you join our amazing Patreon community, not only will you get access to all the Flutterflow apps that I built on this channel, where you can easily view and or clone them and create your own versions of these apps, but you also get access to extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, as well as our Patreon exclusive masterclass series, where I do deep dives of specific topics that our community votes on. And in fact, we're going to be doing another masterclass shortly, and that's going to be available to our Patreon community members. Plus, when you join our Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, and that's highly, highly appreciated. And so if this sounds interesting to you, then definitely check out our Patreon community and consider becoming a member. You can see a link to it in the description below this video. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video and you're looking to see more tutorials on building amazing AI apps, check out the very helpful video in the corner of your screen right now.